Well, I think there's a clear message here. The Commission, as was said yesterday when Vice President Jourova gave you the official minutes of the meeting of the College, the Commission absolutely believes that we need to find a solution which would provide us with a transitional solution to trigger and encourage investment before the new MFF kicks in and the recovery initiative, as it's known. So really we're talking semantics here. The new financial framework and the recovery initiative itself can only really kick in as of the beginning of 2021, because it means that decisions have to be taken within the appropriate time frame. But we also recognise the need for a bridging solution to be found to cover the period between now and the time where the new financial framework becomes operational. And what we've said, and have said on a number of occasions here, is that we are thinking about the best way in which we can bring about a recovery in investment, over and above what is already on the table, of course. And there's a lot on the table already, I should point out, in terms of measures that have been taken by the Member States and by the European Union's institutions to support the economy, given the current situation we find ourselves in. So I don't think there's any difference of opinion. I think there's just a question of semantics at play here. A follow-up, if I may. Just to make sure I properly understood. You talk about a bridging solution. That means that you could start with the recovery fund before January 2021. So January 21 only refers to the MFF. And are there any other solutions on the table? Giovanni, what I have to say is that the Commission will come forward with proposals. I'm sure you can understand that before the Commission has come forward with these proposals, I couldn't possibly give you any detailed perusal of those proposals. I'm just giving you an idea of where our thinking is headed and how it is structured. And the basic approach is, as has been said by the Commission President on a number of occasions, that the key axis for any recovery plan is the MFF. And to bolster the MFF, we would obviously have to have a recovery initiative. And that recovery initiative would enable us to make money available to strengthen the MFF. That is looking ahead to the period after the 1st of January 2021. But we also recognise that before that can happen, we need to have a solution in place, which means that we will already be able to start investments before the end of the year, in the second half of 2020. Now, exactly what this will be called, exactly what the modalities will be, I don't know. We'll have to wait for the Commission to come forward with proposals on that. I hope that has served to clarify your question. Are there any other questions on this same issue?
Those who do not have questions on this, but on other subjects, who unraise their hand for the moment. Okay, Tommaso.
Good morning or good afternoon. Apologies. My question is not exactly on the recovery fund, but on the ESM credit lines. It is connected. May I ask it now, or do you prefer later?
Yeah, I think you go ahead. Can we say something? Can I say something? We are now saying recovery initiative. Okay, recovery fund is vocabulary that was used prior to the European Council, completely legitimate. What the Commission is working on now is something which we will call the recovery initiative. because it's about both how you actually collect the necessary funding and what you spend it on. But yes, go ahead with your question on the ESM.
Okay, it is just because I have read on an Italian newspaper, Repubblica, this morning that the ESM has sent to the national government the term sheet of the credit lines which are going to be modeled on the ECCL. There is a passage in the term sheet reported by the newspaper which says that the European Commission is going to clarify the monitoring and surveillance in agreement with the two-pack rules. Given that the two-pack rules, if I recall well, foresee the possibility to modify the memorandum of understanding later on, I just wonder if the Commission will be able to exclude the introduction of an ex post conditionality, as it is called. I think it would be so because Commissioner Gentiloni has just explained that political decisions are going to prevail on old rules. I just wonder if the Commission is confident to be able to exclude an ex post conditionality in the credit lines, which will be made available to the member states by the ESM. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'll call Marta to the podium, but you're actually asking the spokesman on economic affairs to comment on what the Commissioner on economic affairs has said. So I'm afraid that what we will be able to add is rather limited. Marta.
No, indeed, and I also won't be able to comment on any leaked documents, of course, in line with our practice. I think on the issue of conditionality, I can only recall what the Eurogroup has agreed on the 9th of April, and which was, of course, also endorsed by the European Council on in its 23rd of April meeting. And let me quote, the only requirement to access the credit line will be that Euro area member states requesting support would commit to use this credit line to support domestic financing of direct and indirect healthcare cure and prevention-related costs due to the COVID-19 crisis. As you know, work on the operationalization of the ESM pandemic crisis support instrument is ongoing, so I won't be able to give you any details, further details at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marta. Other questions on this topic overall? David, is it on this? David Carreta.
Oui, merci.
Yes, thank you very much, Enrico. One question for you and then another question. Could you just clarify something on this term, recovery? It was an instrument before, and now you say it's an initiative.
Autant pour moi, peut-être que je me suis...
Well, maybe I made a mistake myself, actually, regarding this, which would be quite unforgivable, I agree. But this is all very new, and maybe I actually used the wrong term. I'll just check that, and I'll come back to you in a second. And what was your second question? Yes, on the ESM and the term sheet. Because this term sheet was already discussed in March, actually. Now, regarding the Commission's role here, what does it mean when there's reinforced surveillance or monitoring? I mean, technically, what does it entail? Because you can interpret this in all sorts of different ways. And, of course, there would be major political repercussions in Italy. So what does it mean, this enhanced surveillance? Now, before Marta comes back, I would just like to welcome your attention to detail. It is indeed a recovery instrument. That's what we said yesterday, and thank you very much for correcting me there. Marta? Thank you. David, as I just said to Tommaso, we can't comment on any documents which haven't yet been published or which are still under discussion. Regarding your question, for the moment, the Commission has not yet taken a decision on the implementation of this agreement, which I just mentioned. And at any rate, the whole monitoring or surveillance system will be in line with the political agreement which was reached in the Eurogroup and the European Council. That's all I can say for the moment.
Okay, merci Marta.
Thank you, Marta. I can see Roberto. Is it on this topic, Roberto?
Actually, no, it's for you, but not on this subject.
Okay, so hold on, please. Moses, same thing, I suppose. Okay, Patricia, you had a question. No, okay, so then let